All right, guys, how you doing? We are looking at the final. I don't think it's even 2 pages, to be honest. Final couple of pages of Stave 4. Um, we're very, very near the end. Stave 5 is only about 7 or 8 pages long, so we're very, very near the end. And this is kind of the summative part of Scrooge's kind of learning experience and the learning curve that he's been on. And that's why I wanted to do this part as separate. That even though it's a really short amount of time, you'll see there's a lot to talk about. The length of the video, I'm sure, will be kind of much more than you'd imagine for a kind of 2 pages worth of content. So we ended last time with leaving the Cratchits, and Scrooge says that he just feels something, that the time is short, that he needs to know. There's an urgency that he's starting to feel. He asks if the person he saw lying dead in the room with the sheet over them was him. Was that man lying dead me? And obviously we know the ghost doesn't speak. It doesn't communicate in any other way except that pointing finger that we've seen a lot of in this stave. Now, as we go down, we see here. Look, the spirit didn't say anything, but it did go straight on until. All right, so until besought by Scrooge to tarry for a moment. Okay, so we're kind of reminded here that this thing is not inanimate. It is a sentient thing. It is aware. It is conscious. Yeah, and it's still there to help Scrooge. Ultimately, it's there to guide him to a better way of life and a better way of helping others, not just himself. And we see that here, that it did not stay for anything. So it's very determined. It's very kind of it's full of tenacity, but it does, when he can't quite go, it does pause for a second and let him catch up. So again, we're reminded that this is a journey and it's a learning curve for him. Now then we get to Scrooge's house, and he says, let me behold what I shall be in days to come. As in, let me see what will happen. And the hand kind of points elsewhere, and he questions it. Why are you pointing that way? The inexorable finger underwent no change. This immovable, this thing that will not budge, yeah, it undergoes no change. He's kind of met his match, he's this person where, external heat and cold has little influence on Scrooge, and now he's met something where external heat and cold has no influence on this thing. That yes, Scrooge might be that kind of awful person, but this thing is more stubborn, more determined, and more immovable than Scrooge thinks he is. Now Scrooge rushes over to the window, and he sees that it was still an office, but it wasn't his. Furniture wasn't the same, and the figure in the chair was not himself. Okay, so we're getting, again, foreshadowing that he's not around anymore. That we kind of already know, but Scrooge is getting more and more hints, and he seems to be in denial. He's trying to ignore it, or trying to kind of think of a different reason for this to be the case. He's trying to find any reason to not believe that in this future he's dead, because he's faced with his own mortality then, and the idea of it being too late, because we've just had the present, and now the future is all he's seeing is his death so far. So possibly it's coming soon. Now then we get to this bit here. Look, it talks about a churchyard and a worthy place. So we get a whole description here about the churchyard and how it is a worthy place of what's coming next. And again, we can probably guess. But again, think about the going against of the stereotype of the kind of Victorian writers who had these long, flowing, multi-clausal sentences. And now we've got two short, simple sentences. Yeah? That's even a minor sentence, a churchyard. And then it says a worthy place. These really brief things encapsulating this whole description of the churchyard. This churchyard is basically a metaphor for Scrooge himself. Yeah? It kind of represents him. If you meet someone really happy, they might have bright clothes, they might have, really bright colours in the house, and kind of, stereotypically that is kind of representing them, but obviously there's similar for the opposite. And that's exactly what's happening here. He is the churchyard. Yeah? It represents him wholly, 100%. Now after this, it says, the spirit stood among the graves and pointed down to one. Okay? Now we've got that proper noun, and we've seen a pattern of this all the way through the novella, and it's a really good point to make in terms of kind of holistic choices by Dickens. So we see a lot of this throughout. And obviously, again, this is a story we're meant to learn from, us as an audience, not just Scrooge. Well, not even Scrooge, because, again, he doesn't exist. We learn through his mistakes, almost. It's basically a fable in that sense. And Dickens helps the story and helps the narrative by personifying a lot of things or making them more noticeable to us. So he makes this pronoun, one, into a proper noun. Okay? Pointing down at one. This is the significant one. This is the one we're meant to focus on. It makes it more alive as if it's a character, because then it creates empathy for the audience, therefore we relate more, and therefore we take more from the story. Now then we get this part, look, he advances towards it trembling. We see a lot of this kind of emotive language now starting to be more fluent and more regular. The phantom was exactly as it had been, but he dreaded that he saw new meaning in its solemn shape. So this phantom is unchanging. Yeah, we've just seen that it's undergone no change. No change. What was that? Weird pronunciation there. It's undergone no change. It's not changed at all. And yet he, when he looks at it, is seeing new meaning. He's learning. He's the one changing. There's this kind of example of how experience can be different to knowledge. And the idea is that this is kind of black and white room, and everything in there is black and white. And this person is in there. Obviously, it's not a real thing. It's hypothetical. But she becomes the absolute expert on sight. You know, she understands that there is something called colour, and that, you know, she understands the whole colour spectrum. She becomes like the world's absolute expert on vision and on sight. And there's a TV in the room, and throughout her life, it's always in black and white, which she turns it on. But one day, she's become the expert, and then one day she turns it on and it's in colour. And the kind of the idea is that she doesn't learn any knowledge from seeing it in colour and knowing kind of this background information and this knowledge, seeing it in practice. She's not learned anything new, but the experience would have changed in something about her. It would have changed her understanding. And that's exactly what's happened to Scrooge here. He probably knew that bad people shouldn't do bad things and that you should do good things. But until he experiences it, it changes his understanding of it and how much he can empathise. Yeah? And I think that's what's happening here, where he's looking at this shape, and when he's starting to really piece the pieces together, he is, you know, he's got like a new leaf of understanding. That's a little metaphor for you there. He's got like a new, he's the one that's changed, basically. Now then we get to it. Now, one of my other classes are using the Romeo and Juliet videos on this channel as well. And, you know, if you're doing this text in my class, you will know that Romeo and Juliet is not about Romeo and Juliet. They're irrelevant characters. It's about love overcoming hate. There's kind of a zoomed out idea about what it's actually about. Yeah? A kind of bigger, deeper, wider understanding than just two households both lacking dignity. For A Christmas Carol, the holistic message is literally summed up by Dickens himself. Yeah, it comes from the horse's mouth. Men's courses will foreshadow certain ends, to which, if persevered in, they must lead, said Scrooge. But if the courses be departed from, the ends will change. Say it is thus with what you show me. So this bit here, that is the absolute holistic message. Okay? He even references the idea of the foreshadowing, that Dickens again has gone a bit meta here and talks about kind of the techniques he's using to help us understand this. You know, he talks about the use of the simile in that first page. And now he's talking about how, you know, people can foreshadow their end. And if it's persevering, if they don't stop, they have to go that way. They must. That modal auxiliary. Okay? And if they be departed from, the ends will change. That's it. That you can change. Humanity has the ability to change if it wants to. And then we get the key point. Scrooge crept towards it, trembling as he went, and following the finger, read upon the stone of the neglected grave his own name, Ebenezer Scrooge. So this phantom is pointing at the grave, and he notices it neglected. Really key point, I think, there, that it's as if, you know, what goes around comes around almost, that he neglected throughout his entire life everyone else. And therefore, this is what he gets. His grave is going to be neglected. He's not remembered by anyone. No one cares for him now he's gone. And not just that his body and his remains aren't cared for, but we also know that his soul won't be cared for because he isn't going anywhere good if he doesn't change, if he doesn't redeem himself. That kind of sums him up perfectly, I think. Just a neglected grave. This is what will be if you do not change. Those two words, neglected grave. You're going to be dead and no one's going to care. I've often thought about this as well with, digging your own grave, that you create your own fate, you create your own end and the way that it goes. You kind of make your own destiny almost a lot of the time. And, people have often talked about digging your own grave. It's theorized comes from kind of biblical texts. And again, wouldn't be out of character for Dickens to use biblical references. We've seen that all the way through. Now then, I think we get an important part here, look. And this is very, very true. Why show me this if I am past all hope? Scrooge has realised. Light bulb. Pennies dropped. Why show me this if I'm past all hope? Why this? Surely this isn't just torture for me. And it says, for the first time, the hand appeared to shake. So this finger that's been there the entire time, not moving, is starting to shake. Yeah? And again, it repeats, the kind hand trembled. The more he speaks and the more he verbalizes the learning that he's had to go through, and the more he empathizes with it and understands what's going on, the more it trembles. Now, there's a few interpretations here. One of the main ones that people talk about is the idea that this thing is, again, it's not just like an inanimate object. It's a thing that's conscious and sentient and aware. And a lot of people interpret this as it's starting to feel pity. It recognizes that he's learning. But I think also one interpretation, one that I generally go with, but again, both are valid, is that, and to be honest, you probably want to get both down anyway. The idea that it's starting to tremble, it's starting to get ready to leave. Because again, this is a powerful thing. We've seen a lot of these spirits leave in very drastic and powerful and supernatural ways. And this thing is starting to tremble and then it's starting to shake. Yeah? The kind hand, that it's starting to empathize, but also, you've done it. My job's done. Yeah, this is just the messenger. This is not generally seeing as God himself. It's generally seeing as someone sent by God, or sent by kind of some being above them all. Now, final bit of Stave 4. We see a pattern here of modal verbs and of imperative verbs. So, it talks about, I will honour Christmas in my heart and keep it all the year. I will live in the past, present and future. They shall strive within me. I will not shut out. Tell me I may sponge away on a writing stone. Yeah? So we see that pattern all the way through, these kind of self-determining linguistic devices that Dickens is using, that you've kind of, it's almost like a speech act. So, once something is said, it becomes true. Like in a marriage, I do. Or a judge says, I sentence. The way that kind of language can have the power to actually change things just by being spoken. It's almost as if that's this, where there is a kind of a command to his own self that this is what's going to change. Now the final part, look, in his agony, he caught the spectral hand and it sought to free itself. So he was really strong. He was really clinging onto it to try and save his own soul. And the spirit kind of tries to get away, can't at first, and then it really yanks. It pushes him away. Holding up his hands in a last prayer to have his fate reversed, he saw an alteration in the phantom's hood and dress. It shrunk, collapsed, and dwindled down into a bedpost. And that's it. It's gone. So the lesson's over for Scrooge. Now, Stave 5 next. And again, it's not very long. It's only about 7 pages. So shouldn't be that long of a time until we're done. So, any other questions, do let me know. And in the meantime, stay safe. See you soon. Bye.